What is going on, folks? Welcome back to the Code Chronicles. It's your lovely host, Pags. We are back. We are back. I have done a lot on the time between last episode and this episode. I've integrated Stripe. I've done a Stripe wrapper for components that aren't premium features for premium feature components. Excuse me. So I'll show you what that looks like. I've integrated. You can see two images here. What I'm working on now is just storing the user information and assigning tasks. That's a new functionality we can now do, is assign a task to somebody. So I want to be able to see actually what the task is. So diving straight into it today, folks. Diving straight into it today. Not wasting any time. Not wasting any time at all. So what I wanted to talk about for those new, welcome to the Code Chronicles. We're building a project management system. For those of you returning, you already know what we're doing. You already know. So we have our Kanban page. I updated some icons. As I mentioned, let me show you that Stripe kind of checkout flow. It actually is kind of cool. So it's called base locked overlay. Let me just go ahead and enable it for now. I don't have the webhooks set up with Stripe, but this is what it'll look like. You can ignore the giant pictures of my face. This is just a new thing I'm working on. Let's just comment that out for right now. Let's get our old task back up and running. At least from what you guys roughly remember, but I'm working on this assign button, so I can click it, and then if we refresh, this is a task called test. Let me show this real quick. There should be a user ID associated to that now. So we had two up top. There should be a third user ID. So it looks like that's broken right now. We're gonna put a pin in that one. But that was working earlier. That's why we see two task IDs right here, where it's assigned to somebody. It's assigned to me. So I'm getting a put request, a bad request. I think. Let me look into the assigned task. Let's see real quick. I bet it's just something simple like the naming, because I did change the naming in Prisma quite a bit. Let's see, user ID, task ID. I'm passing both the user account ID, the user that's clicking assign, and then the task ID. I also probably want to have some sort of drop down where I can pick who I want to assign the task to. But anyway, we'll work on that in a moment. It was working earlier though, so I will have to look into that bug. The thing I want to show is that Stripe feature real quick, where we have this overlay that it's just a wrapper where I plug in the component around what I want to lock. So here is the normal component, right? And then I have this thing called base locked overlay, and I'll show you guys what that roughly looks like. And it turns it into this. So subscribe to access premium features, so someone can hover over it and they see the subscription thing, premium access subscription. They can click on it. You could import it to the Stripe checkout flow. Do the Stripe, checkout Stripe at yotmail.com. We should see 424242. For those who don't know, you can test credit cards with that 4242. We'll say test card. And I was working on the webhooks yesterday. So the only thing that needs to be appropriate on the Stripe card is the 42424242 all the way through on the card info, and then everything else, just like the expiration date has to be farther than today. So boom, we get a confirmation screen. I can have it redirect on Stripe. That is possible, where it just redirects home. And we did actually have that set up prior, but I've taken it off for now because I don't know. I figured a confirmation page is fine and people can redirect back to what they want. And I need to store that with the user's account to see who's premium and who's not. And then I'll ultimately flip it, so then it'll unlock these features. And it'll just be this base overlay where I'll need to do some of that state data handling and use effect to fetch the user's account to see where they're at. So that's how I'm going to lock some components, right? Like I said, it's just this base locked overlay that I built, which is just this. And really, it's just a child wrapper. So here's the component right here. Here's all the overlay with this Stripe thing, the base Stripe component, which is another component I built, which I won't show you because I have my access keys in there right now. But I will most certainly build a tutorial video or something on that to show you guys my process. And again, I'm still feeling it out as I go. I'm just building it as I fly it type thing. So so basically it just checks if premium, and then if it is, then boom, we just pass in the children. Just, no different than the normal component should be. If a member is or isn't premium, I'm just Boolean value checking. And all I need to do is basically, it'll look something like this. Set is member premium, or is premium member rather. Basically, all it'll look like is some sort of data fetch where we'll get it from the user store. So we'll say user store dot like user, right? Or I don't know. We'll probably build it down the road in an episode. But I imagine we'll go ahead and probably do something like this: user store, and we're going to get the user. So whatever user this is, we'll get this profile. And then out of that, the profile will return a JSON object that looks something like this. Where we have like a user ID, where it's like blah, 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 all this, right? User first name, we'll say Ryan, user last name, tags, boom. And then we'll have some sort of like is premium member right here. And that's what our data, and there's a few other things too, like the task associated with the users, which is just an array of objects, of tasks. So we'll have some sort of data object return. And basically what I'll do is just say, like we'll have this set to, basically we could like set user profile. It actually sets it in the store is how I set it up. So I don't need to do it. I can just import it from user store. So it'll actually be user store dot like user account or whatever. And the dot user will actually be this thing right here. And then basically we're just going to say dot is premium member, and we'll just set all that to his premium member. So anywhere in the project, right, depending on whether we store it as true or false, is going to let or not let people use premium features, if you will. And the only catch there too is we want to trigger this change, the is premium member. This will be a webhook from Stripe. So that's going to be the only tricky part, I think, or not the only tricky part, excuse me, but one of the tricky parts. So that'll be the approach on that in a nutshell. There's probably going to be a few bumps on the way, but we'll figure it out. We will figure it out. So the webhook from Stripe will basically check. I'm going to have it check, I think, on subscription, right? So every time a user subscribes, the webhook will fire off. So if there's a successful payment, boom, the webhook fires off. I think I mentioned it briefly in the last episode. But yeah, I vaguely remember how much I've got done since the last episode and kind of in between, because we have this new, or we should have this new assigned task functionality. I'm storing the image pre-signed URL is actually something I'm doing. So here's what our user objects will look like on load now. We have both the user ID and then the image pre-signed URL. And we have some settings tabs. Oh, and then I constructed this upper component, if you will, this base top nav. It was the base breadcrumbs and the base top navigation combined. So base top nav is what I came up with. So boom, you can see this. I have the overlay on this add column buttons. So let me turn that off for now, though. Let's not deal with that right quite yet, but we do have it just in our back pocket, ready to go. Settings page, I'll say my name is Ryan. We'll say last name Pags. We'll say Pags1. Position I did add for, let's see, what you can add in your company. Let's see if our update request is working. Boom. So all that information gets plugged into our database. That is this account. Now, if we go to a different account, let's sign out and pop into another account. Say sign in with Google. We'll use this first one. See my algo expert up here. I have been coding in Python. I've been doing algorithms in Python, and I've been enjoying it. So So boom, all of our stuff loads. We could see the pre-signed image URL thing is what I need to work on. I'm working on how to fetch the features from, or all the information from users by the task. I don't think I'm thinking about it proper. So let's call this account Brian Bags. That's what we'll call this one. And this guy, he will be the project manager. How about that? Boom. So we should have that data in our database now where we have two accounts. One is Ryan Pags, he's the software engineer. Then we have Brian Bags, who's the project manager. And if I refresh, we should be able to see that up here. It should say loading user data, and then it should pull up with Ryan Pags here in a sec. Obviously, there's some sort of Axios error, I believe. Okay, there's definitely an Axios error. Let me pull off Compass and let's see what our error is about. So looks like it's a GET request with GET request user not found. So I think what's happening is the function is firing off sometimes without the user ID being there first. So let's go to our user store. It was actually something I was trying to figure out earlier too. Not get users, it's going to be fetch user. So this is going to be it. I almost want to await this, I think. And we need to async function this, but I don't know if we can export async functions. Can we? Seems to be a use state. Error cannot be called an async function. So what we can do, I believe, is say function init, just to init the project. And we'll call this one async here. And we'll actually make this a piece of state. We'll say user ID and set user ID. Basically what I want to do here is set up a place where we can do the async function. So use user right here is how we're going to do it. User obviously isn't being used. I guess we could actually not, instead of user ID, we could do both user. So user profile, how about that? And set user profile. And this will, oh, we already have that profile, set profile. Okay, so set profile, I will say user, right? So that gets worked there, and use user. Why is it not being a thing? Use user hook. It's called in a function that is neither a React function component nor a React hook function. Some components need to be okay. So let's do this different then. Let's see. Because I think what's going on is the user ID isn't showing up quick enough, and then everything's firing off, and it's like firing off without a user ID. So there's obviously going to be a problem associated with that. So let's see, console ninja undefined, and let's see when the user ID finally pops up. You can actually pop it in a use effect even. How about this? Use effect, boom, and boom. Let's try that. So do you see how the first few were undefined, and then it pulls through and says, okay, here's the ID. So I think what's happening is that where it's firing off and then not working. So let's see what they did here. Use user, fetch, wait, if user, post user. I see but I need that for everything, for getting users, for it all needs to be awaited. It all needs to be awaited because I don't think it's working the way, in the consistent way that we want it to, right? So, and an easy check I think would also be, well, let's go ahead and go to user profile. Boom. Update user. Oh, this is not going to be it. It's going to be user settings actually. So boom, user first name, all this stuff right here. User store profile. So I don't know if the profile is being set first. We saw it in the database. So if we update the name, right, for this account, whichever one it is, we'll say new name, and let's update. We should refresh the database and see new name here. Boom. So let's put that back, Ryan Pags, and we'll say PM for project manager, one of the two. Boom, refresh that, and boom, that's all up. So we should see it occasionally. Sometimes we might get a lucky fetch. It was working earlier though, so I find that weird that that it's not working. So I wonder if I change something in Prisma. Lissimo. Let me pop Prisma off the screen real quick. And then I'll bring it back on. I just need to make sure that it's closed. Golly, folks, golly. I hope you guys are enjoying the Code Chronicles because it has been a journey. It has been a lot of fun. But I will say this, it's been a challenge, right? To do all this, uploading videos, algorithm Sundays, you know, this, that, and the other. It's great. I'm not complaining neither. I'm very grateful for it, that it's working, that it's growing, we're hitting the goals. I think that's really cool. But it is tiring. It is tiring. You know, there's been days where I've recorded 2-3 episodes in one day, and I'm still trying to get this other project done and still try to learn and build this behind the scenes sometimes. It is a lot of work, and add to the software course. It's just like take these tech recruiter calls, it's just nonstop. It feels like all the time, but not complaining. Busybody's a good body, right? So let's see what's going on. So tasks are working, but tasks aren't associated to user IDs quite yet. We're kind of working on that in the middle of it. Here we have, boom, let's see if this works. I'm going to pull up the status code error 400. I wonder if the user ID is not populating anymore, or if I renamed it, because this was working flawlessly earlier. So that concerns me a little if I change it to assign to ID potentially. So let's go ahead and pop into the user store and see what's going on, and we might need to check the endpoints. So we do know that this use user thing does not show up for a bit. So let's look into some React hooks. Actually, I'll just ask ChatGPT real quick to build a custom React hook. Boom, 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 boom. Okay, so set state use toggle. I see. So it's like how we're using the stores. We're basically using the stores as hooks. I see. So can we use the use user as a hook, like to get the profile, like have a profile store? But that is what the user store is kind of for, is to find the profile. So I don't want to do that just for fetching, right? Just for literally using this use user. What if we just throw a set timeout here real quick, just for 1,000 seconds or 1,000 milliseconds, just to I think that'll stop the code block enough where it'll do the fetch and get the user and then go through the rest of the code block. But maybe not. I'm not seeing it. So let's see running. So we should see. Oh, they do it at the same time. Okay. Got it. Okay. Well, that's different. That's much different than Vue. Interesting. I feel like Vue would stop there. And the code block one, like threading down through the entire scope of the functional component, you know? So that's a bit different. Let's think about this bug. Let's think about it. I feel like it has to be something with how I was changing all the users, because I was getting a user ID with all of this stuff now. So I'm checking, I think nope, that's update user. Get user by assignee ID, where I was checking all this task assigned ID. I don't even know if I needed that, but I wonder where am I using this function? Because that's where Prisma client. So it would be maybe in the user store. So a pre-signed image URL, that's maybe what we want to shoot to configure today. A pre-signed image URL is just going to be the just the image URL, like literally a like no different than you could pull a URL from the internet of Google / whatever image of a mountain or something for like your SRC, right? That's all a pre-signed URL is just it's a custom like signature URL from a database where the database knows you have direct access to this. So if someone has this link, this specific link, they can access the photo. That's all it is saying you don't need to do any keys, you don't need to do any sort of special stuff. You having this URL alone is enough of an access token to see this image. So basically what I want to do, I think, for things like my task table is to have it get users functions where it gets the users by the task, or I want to have the task with users assigned to it, and then the users assigned to it would have kind of the pre-signed URL associated. I'm not sure. We're gonna have to think about it, but it's gonna be on both of our Kanban page and our dashboard page. We're gonna need it on both. So I want to think about the data structure in a proper way. Let's go to base column. By Kanban page, I really just mean the base column. So let's see, base task table where it'll exist on the front end. So these are the three kind of places we need to look. So get users again. Let's maybe look at the response here to see if we're getting a response. Well, we are. We obviously see it in the task table, but I'm curious why it wasn't working on the back end there. So get users, I think we'll see this. Boom. If we fetch this, if we go to the dashboard, we should see something, right? Boom, there it is. Okay, so user undefined, user ID, it should be populated there. We definitely aren't getting the user ID because it would only make a new account if that user ID doesn't exist. So what it did, it slipped by before the user ID showed up, posted, and then the user ID showed up because it already has this account. It should, and the image URL isn't going to be there because the user ID is needed to get the image URL. Or I should say the use user function needs to be fired off before all this. So maybe we will do a hook. But this is what I want to talk about, the image pre-signed URL here. If we go ahead and paste that in without the quotes, it'll be the direct image stored in Clerk. So All we're doing is just taking that down, and we're storing that ourselves, the pre-signed URL. I thought Clerk would have, well, they do store it all, but so we don't have to do an S3 bucket or anything. But they kind enough to give us the pre-signed URL where we can populate that with our task, I believe. So if we pop open Prisma, Prisma needs to have users associated to the task, which is going to be this. I feel like it should actually be a many-to-many relationship. I don't know how to do that though. So task needs to be associated to more task. Many-to-many relationship work. Let's see, that's what I asked. Can you make this many-to-many relationship work? And what I want is basically multiple users can be assigned a task, I think is what I want it to be. So let's see what they did. Related fields, boom, task status, user ID, user's task. Oh, I do not like that. I do not like that. Well, okay, let's just get one user done first before going crazy with it. So how can we do this? This is going to be a little bit of thinking right here, folks. Let's think about it. So the user store, we kind of need to handle the user ID issue first, I think, is number one. So use user. What if we just popped it in a function up here and just awaited it like this? Oh, but you know what? It doesn't like async await, but it wouldn't matter anyways, because it's not going to like it if it's not going to like it if we do a hook anyways, right? So let's see, function. We want to fetch user ID, I believe. So fetch user ID, wait for user ID is what it's saying. Fetch user, and we also want to post user, I think. So boom. Axios, let's see, await user ID. We are no longer doing that though, so let's clear the console. Let's see. It's waiting. Boom. So we have some get request error. Let's pop into it. Let's see which one it is. Error fetching user. Well, of course, because there's no user ID. So if user ID, boom. Let's see. Okay, so that's half the battle. Half of the battle. Fetches the user response here, 404 not found. So it's saying it's a front end deal, but I don't know if that is actually 404 not found. User of this thing is not found. But I can assure you we do have it, right? The one ending in ZO right here. 2T ZO, starts with 2T, ends with ZO, so that looks about appropriate. I wonder why this all got broken right before I hopped onto the sign thing worked. I was getting the pre-signed URLs. Maybe that's right around the area when I broke it. I believe it's not the dashboard. It's gonna be base task table. This area right here. The idea was just to get the pre-signed URL from all the users, and then we could show the accounts, like, you know, the task 1, you know, associated with it, or task 2. And this would actually just be, so it'd actually just be this pretty much, but let's change the source. Boom. So these now should be different and a lot smaller. Yeah, so that's how I want the task, where we're actually getting the user associated to the task somehow. Right now I'm kind of doing it the wrong way, I think, is I'm fetching all the users and then I'm showing them, versus I should be fetching all the task and then the users associated to the task. But I just wanted to get paper on, or paint on paper to get this idea working, right? So here's kind of this area with the task themselves. Let's block it out, but this is what I want ultimately, is to, oh, well, let's not then. To show the users associated to the task as this. So there's a few bugs that need to be kinked out. One is the user ID. And the other is the strategy on how we want to do this. So I think a many-to-many relationship would work, with whether we're mapping through the task or the users. We still should see the pre-signed URL, the image URL. So I guess the way to think about that would be, when we assign a task, we should we do pass the user ID, so we should be able to access that when we fetch for the task, right? Because now the task has the assignee ID, which is this right here, which is that big long string, right? Let's see why the assigned task isn't working anymore. But the point is we have this assigned task ID, whether this is working or not. We do have these 2 tasks assigned, and they're assigned to 2 different users. They're assigned to each one of these accounts. And I just want to reflect that in the image and maybe like put their name next to it. So everything's just hard coded to say the first name of this account, but we want to say the first name of this account ID right here. That's what we actually want, is to get the user. So maybe we can go user store and actually just fetch an independent user. Fetch user, I believe, and pop that in there. Oh, then of course we're not going to be able to see the task associated with it. Huh. I'm thinking. Was this two things? Come on. Stop. Here we go. Here we go, right? We just need to wrap them all in fragments, right? Something like this. We're getting a little lag, folks. There we go. Okay, so now I can actually fire this function off and see. I'm gonna put it here. Boom. User store fetch task according to the task ID. Console log. Okay, so now we should see if we get a response out of that. And I think that should be the response we want. In theory. Let's see, folks. Come on. Mama needs a new pair of shoes. Let's go. Clerk failed to load clerk. Okay, so... Oh, and then we get a promise that doesn't get resolved, which I believe is the promise we just made. So, promise. Yeah. Undefined, undefined. Okay, we're gonna undo a lot of that. We're getting some serious lag, and I'm sure it's just running through the code block way too many times. So let's think about this from a back-end approach. I feel like there could be an endpoint where we just fetch the data needed for the task table, like a task table endpoint, if you will. And I think we're gonna look at this in a GraphQL type of way. Because you know what this could actually be, which would make sense, is to have like a team ID, and then this would actually make a little bit more sense, I think, because we're gonna end up building teams as well and projects. So we kind of need all these things pieced together. Let me just try to dummy up a task table thing real quick. Let's see, boom, stripe. We actually don't want that. We just want get task table data, if you will. And let's go. We don't need stripe ID. We just need the task. And what do we want to include here? We want to include assign to. What else though, right? What else? Task status, it maybe? I'm not sure, folks. This was more of a debugging type catch-up thing. I guess I probably need to do some behind-the-scenes stuff because my head is hurting and I'm running out of ideas and ways to think about this. But I do want to push on. I do want to keep figuring out what is wrong here with some of this stuff. So if we do have the assignee ID mapped through a function, I don't want to call that ID like 50 times. In other words, I don't want to run this function because the equivalent of what I was trying to do earlier was doing something like this, where we say, I'm gonna follow through with it though, because sometimes digging is what we need. So we get our task, right? And then we're gonna get our task assigned to ID. Oh, we're gonna map that. Task stores .task.map, okay. And that should show us all the IDs, and there'll be 2 IDs roughly, and the rest should be undefined. But the thing I would kind of think about doing is just like hard coding it here, or I guess, let's see, like this should bring up the first ID if I put the 0th index of this. And then I guess that could just be the index of the map passed through this function. Let's see, let's wait for the user ID to come in. Undefined, and then boom, type of right here. So I think that's pulling in the task. Let's not do this real quick, and let's see what it comes out with actually. So we pull up all of our tasks, and we should see if they're assigned or not, right? So the idea is we need to link these tasks with somebody or with many people, right? So whether it's a team, Chester said tasks belong to projects and projects can have teams, I believe. So let's see. Console log. Yep. From front end, that's exactly where we want it. Gosh, even with ChatGPT, who knew building software would be so interesting? So it is going to be this big one, right, where we're mapping through all the tasks. I'm not sure why we're just not getting, why we're getting all this stuff. Symbol, type of, React element thing. I feel like it should just be the task here. Yeah, or like task name even, or whatnot. Oh, duh, because if we're not getting the user ID, then it wouldn't show, it wouldn't be able to show who's it's assigned to, I don't believe. So this should show the task IDs. Nope, okay, never mind, that theory's wrong. Okay, folks, this has been a bit of a frustrating one, but we did make progress behind the scenes on the image pre-signed URL by storing that in the data and along with our users, but we lost functionality of the assigned task ID, and then the user ID as well seemed to have some sort of issues. So I am going to park it here and do some debugging. I guess this was more of a check-in on where things are at, less of a walkthrough on what I was doing. But yeah, we've made some progress on some of the icons and just polishing stuff up, keeping it simple and cleaning some things up that were working. Obviously, there's more polish that needs to be done, so I'm going to do that right now. And yeah, a little frustrating to be honest, because I was coming into this like super prepared, feeling good about the assigned task thing and the Stripe overlay and all that stuff. But sometimes you come in prepared, you can't do it. Sometimes you come in underprepared and it goes phenomenal. So, but I will post this because it's an honest episode. A bit frustrating, a bit challenging. I'm still struggling on how to think about the data, if it's a many-to-many relationship or a many-to-one relationship on task, because that's going to be two different approaches entirely. So, but I'll park it here, guys. Thank you so much for watching the Code Chronicles. Let's circle back on the next one. Circle the wagons, take inventory of what needs to be done. I think is probably what needs to happen, where I can start clicking off task and finishing things out. So yeah, I'll leave it at that. Guys, cheers. Thank you.